Hey everybody, welcome to Professional Exam Tutoring, and today's video is a lesson on convertible bonds for the Series 7 top-off exam. Okay, example 1. Janice purchases an ABC Corporate 6% convertible bond. The bond can be converted into stock at $20 per share. 2 months later, the company announces that it's going private, and the stock jumps to $25. What is the parity price of the bond after this increase? Okay, so what we're going to do, as we do in any calculation that you see around convertible bonds, 95% of the time plus, it's always going to be first calculating the conversion ratio. So to do this, you have to pinpoint a couple things. So first, remember the formula. Conversion ratio equals par value of the bond over conversion price of the stock. So first you want to identify where is the conversion price in this question. Okay, so we see the bond can be converted into stock at $20 per share. Right here is your conversion price. So our formula now becomes $1,000, which is the par value of the bond, divided by $20, which is the conversion price of the stock. And as you can see, that gets us to 50. So you receive 50 shares for every one bond that you convert from bond to stock. Okay, so now ultimately in this question, we're trying to figure out what the parity price of the bond is after this increase. And so the second step of this question is you really want to figure out, okay, are we trying to figure out the bond price or are we trying to figure out the stock price? Well, from the question, they're asking us what the parity price of the bond is, so we're trying to figure out the bond price. We want to figure out what that is at parity. So the bond value at parity formula is going to be our next step. Okay, so just as a refresher, the conversion ratio is the par value of a bond divided by its conversion price. Now, when we take a look at this equation again, we can basically express it as the bond value, which we know is par, or $1,000, normally the numerator, divided by the conversion price, which is usually a stock price. So we can rewrite this as we see here, which is bond value divided by stock price, and that should get to what our conversion ratio is. So how we proceed with this question, we write out the bond value divided by stock price should equal 50 if this bond is going to be, this bond and stock will be trading in parity. Now, a way to get to this is we can rearrange the formula and find for this specific question, which is asking what the parity price of the bond is, we want to isolate the bond value. So again, a review of high school math shows us that in order to get the bond value all on its own here, we want to take the stock price and move it over to the right-hand side. So in order to do that, then we have to multiply through. So we're left with the bond value equals 50 times the stock price. Okay, so let's move on to step 4. We're going to calculate the bond value at parity. So we have our formula. The bond value at parity is equal to 50 times the stock price. Remember, 50 is our conversion ratio. So we're going to say we get 50 stocks for every bond that we own. And so we want to know, okay, if we take the 50 stocks that we have and multiply them by the new stock price, then that should get us to what our bond value at parity is. So we take 50 as the conversion ratio, we multiply that by $25, which is where the stock jumped up to as per the question, and we find that the bond value at parity therefore should be $1,250. Okay, so now let's move on to example number 2. A DEF convertible bond has a conversion ratio of 40. If the bond jumped 10% from initial parity, what should be the price of the stock, assuming the bond's value and the stock's price are still in parity? Okay, so As with all questions, like I said before, always make sure that you start out with calculating the conversion ratio. So in this case, we see the very first part of the sentence here, they're already telling us the conversion ratio. So it's already given, so we don't have to do anything there. No calculation necessary. We know that one bond converts into 40 shares of stock. Okay then, so the next part of the question, we're trying to figure out, okay, so if this bond jumped 10% from initial parity, what should the bond's value be? So step 2 is calculate the bond value after the 10% jump. If you remember what initial parity means, initial parity is where the bond's par value is divided by the conversion price. And so when it's jumping from the initial parity, 10% from initial parity, that's telling us that the bond's price is jumping 10%. So we know bonds priced at initial parity is $1,000, and so we have to figure out what does it look like if the $1,000 par value jumps by 10%. So to calculate that, you can add 10% to the $1,000, and a simple mathematical way to do that is add 0.1 to 1 and multiply through by the number. So in this case, the number being $1,000, which is par value, times 1.1, which is adding 10% to it, that gets you $1,100. Okay, so at this point we know that the bond, after it's gone up 10% from initial parity, is worth $1,100. But the question is, what should be the price of the stock, assuming the bond's value and the stock's price are still in parity? And that's saying, assuming that they're still in parity after the bond has jumped up by 10%. So we know that in parity, the bond value divided by the stock price should equal the conversion ratio. So we say, okay, the bond value after it's jumped up by 10% is worth $1,100. The stock price we don't know yet, but we do know that the conversion ratio is 40. So one convertible bond will get you 40 stocks. So here we need to isolate the stock price. So again, just like in that other equation, we're going to have to rearrange. So in order to rearrange this formula, we take the stock price and we stick it on the right hand side. We do that by moving it up over here, and you're going to multiply through. And as you multiply through, then you can take the 40 and then you're going to swing that underneath here by dividing through on the other side. And that's going to leave us with $1,100 divided by 40 to get us to the stock price. So from there, we just need to calculate the stock price at parity, and that's going to be $1,100 divided by 40, which is equal to $2,750. So if the bond's value is $1,100, and we assume that the bond is still at parity, meaning you should still be able to get 40 stocks for every one bond that you own, then the stock's price is going to have to be $2,750. And so the stock price at parity is $2,750. Okay, moving on to example 3. An investor buys a Crocodile Corp 4.5% 2030 convertible bond at par. The bond can be converted at $40. Crocodile Corp reports strong earnings and the stock jumps 10% from initial parity, while the bond increases to 102. Should the investor convert? Okay, now these type of problems usually cause people the most headache on exams as well as practice questions. The confusion here just gets to be, how do you know whether you should convert a bond to a stock or not? So let's walk through this together. First, as always, the very first thing that you want to do is look to calculate the conversion ratio. Do you have to convert it or don't you? Just like we saw in the last question, sometimes they'll just give it to you. Quite often they won't. In this case, they do not. So the bond can be converted at $40. That's telling us, okay, we're going to have to throw this into the formula. Remember, the formula is par value divided by conversion price. So par value being $1,000 divided by 40, we get a conversion ratio of 25. So just a refresher, one bond can be converted into 25 stocks. Okay, the next step, calculate what the share price should be if it gets converted. So remember again, we have our formula that can figure out, all right, if we know the parity value, which is the conversion ratio, then we can just substitute in the bond value and the stock price we have in order to get one or the other. So what I mean by this, let's start out with 25 as a conversion ratio, which is on one side. We know that the bond value divided by the stock price has to equal the 25 in order to say that we are in parity. So we start out by seeing that the bond price is at 102 as the bond increased. So the bond price at 102 means that its value is worth 1,020. In order to be at parity at this price, the 1,020 divided by the stock price has to equal 25. So to solve for what that stock price should be, again, we're going to have to do some high school math here. We switch around the denominator and the left side of the equality. We shift the 25 underneath the 1,020 and we bring the stock price over to the left-hand side so we can isolate it to be by itself. And we find out that the stock price should be $40.80 when the bond price is 102. Okay, so the next part of this example, we're going to have to find out what is the new stock price given the fact that they're asking us that after a strong earnings report, the stock has jumped 10% from initial parity. So remember, what is initial parity? Initial parity is where we start off the conversion ratio equation. $1,000 par value divided by the $40 conversion price, and that gives us our initial parity conversion ratio. And so we would say the initial parity prices of the bond are $1,000 and $40 for the stock. So we need to grow the stock from $40 up 10%, and that's going to be very similar to what we did in the previous example. So in the previous example, we added 10% to the stock, to the bond price by multiplying through by 1.1, and we're going to do so again here. So you can do it by multiplying 40 times 1.1. The other way that you can do it is say, okay, so take 10% of 40, and from that you get 4, and then you just add that to 40. And that, you're going to see, gets you a new stock price of 44. So after this strong earnings report, the stock has jumped up in price from $40 to $44. Okay, and the whole point of this question is we want to figure out, should the investor convert or not? So in this question, we're trying to figure out if Mrs. Smith should convert her bond into stock. Well, here are a few things that we know. So we do know, as per the step 3, that the stock's market price is currently at 44. And what we also know, as per step 2, we know that the stock's price should be $40.80 because the bond is trading at 102. When a bond is trading at 102, we know that in order for it to still be in parity, the bond should be the stock should be trading at $40.80. But we see in the market it's actually trading at $44. So if you were to convert this bond into a stock, you would actually get the $44. You get what the market price is currently. And it, in fact, should only be worth $40.80. So you're actually really making out quite well and better than you should, because the stock should only be worth $40.80. So therefore, if she converts, she's going to get a stock with a market value of $44 when it should only be worth $40.80. Therefore, she does want to convert. And she may even decide to convert and then sell the stock short afterwards, because it's currently trading at $44 and she knows it's only worth $40.80, so she may sell it short in order to make a profit as it goes down. Okay, let's finish off with our fourth of our four fantastic examples. Mrs. Smith bought a convertible bond that can be converted into 20 shares of XYZ Corp when shares were trading at 51. If interest rates increased and the value of the bonds declined to $985 while the stock price dropped to 46, should she convert? So this is another question where we want to find out whether or not she should convert. And as you saw in the last example, basically what you want to do here is you want to find out what the market price is, and specifically of the stock, and determine what the stock price at parity should be, and that's really what's going to determine whether or not you want to convert. So similar to the last example, let's walk through some of the steps. Okay, step one. First, as always, calculate the conversion ratio. In this case, again, they give it to us, so lucky us. We know that we can convert one bond into 20 shares. And they tell us that in the very first sentence. So definitely watch out for that when you're doing questions. Sometimes you might mistake the 20 for the conversion price. It is not the conversion price in this situation. Okay, so one bond can be converted into 20 shares. We got that. Step two, calculate now if the bond and share price are in parity. So to see if they are in parity, we go back to the old formula that we've been using, bond value divided by stock price. We see $985 divided by 46 is 21.4. And that is not in parity because we know that the conversion ratio is 20. And since this is not in parity, there is going to be some type of arbitrage which could come out of this. Now, we don't really get too much focused on arbitrage in this exam, so we won't even touch that for the moment. But whenever there's a discrepancy in the prices, like there is here, meaning they're not trading in parity, then you can be sure that the investor is going to want to take action one way or the other. And we're going to see exactly whether she should convert or not. So in the next step, we're going to want to take a look at calculating what the share price should be if it gets converted. So we're going to go back to our same old formula, bond value divided by stock price. And we see that when we take the bond value of 985 divided by the stock price, which is an unknown at this moment because it's what we're trying to figure out, and we equate that to where the conversion ratio is, which is 20, we're going to come up with a new equation because we need to rearrange as we have done in the previous examples. We take the stock price and we want to isolate it, so we move it over to the left hand side. We take the 20, we bring it underneath the 985 so that we can keep the stock price on the left hand side and create the formula on the right hand side. So we have 985 divided by 20, which gets us to $49.25. Okay, so we have $49.25 as our answer here in terms of what the stock price should be when the bond's value is at $9.85. And now we're going to try and determine whether or not Mrs. Smith should convert. Okay, so to determine whether or not Mrs. Smith should convert, it's going to be the exact same process that we tried in the last example. So whenever you're trying to determine whether you should convert a convertible bond into a stock or not, the focus should always be on what the stock price is in the market, up here the 46, and what it should be down here based off of your calculation of the parity price. So in this situation, we can see that the bond price, or the bond value at 985 translates into what a stock price should be for XYZ, being the 49.25. However, we see that in the market, it's only trading at $46. So in reality, what's happening here is if you decide to convert your bond into a stock, you're going to get the stock's certificate and it's going to come to you at the market price. It's not going to come to you at what it should be trading at. It's going to come to you at what the market price is at that time. So if these two values are not at parity, you could possibly stand to make a mistake if you convert. And that's what we see in this case. The stock price should be worth $49.25, but in fact it's trading at $46. So if she were to convert, she would end up getting less than it should be worth. Therefore, Mrs. Smith is not going to want to convert. All right, and with that, that ends our convertible bonds video. We hope that this helped, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm Jim at professionalexamtutoring.com, or visit our website and we can help hook you up with a very helpful tutor.